Welcome back to Breaking Ground. Today we need to actually go to the moon a little bit closer and get some more stuff done. In particular, I'm going to be doing two missions. One, science data from data space around Kerbin, easy enough, we're going to get some money for that. And we're also going to get the Explore the Moon contract done. That is, we're going to have to go into orbit around the moon. It's not going to need too much of a change from what we already have. However, it does seem like we should get lots of money from it, and money is good. So let's just take that. We can only take 2 contracts at the moment. Can we actually even afford any upgrades? Can't afford you. We could afford this one. And yeah, we don't have flight planning until we do both, unfortunately. But and the NVAB upgrade is quite expensive. So let's leave them alone for now. We're going to eyeball it once again. So modification of our previous rocket, we've taken off the Science Junior, and in here we're going to just replace the science experiments that were on the outside. We've actually just moved them onto the inside. So in the science bay, we've just got 3 wonderful mystery goo containers and not much else, because we've already got the science for everything else near the moon, so we don't need to worry about carrying it with us. However, I did install MechJeb just to give me some timing information on the remaining time in the stages. We don't technically need both that and Kerbal Engineer, so I'll just remove that for now. And everything else is pretty much the same. I did experiment with enabling procedural parts, but I had some problems because I like procedural parts and procedural fairings. Had some problems with it showing up the node, so I'm staying with the classic vanilla fuel tanks for now. And just a brief reminder, we have a 400 fuel tank at the top, and we have 5 at the bottom, and then we have 2 hammer boosters on either side. And let's get going. So we'll just take Jeb and get him to take off for us. And MechJeb at this point doesn't have any altitude, autopilot or anything like that, any altitude stuff. It has nothing whatsoever other than really the delta V stats and the orbit stats. So we're going to go perfectly fine of just flying manually. And if I just switch to this, it's easier to see there what my Apo and Peri is. And we're just going to go into a lower orbit, around 80 kilometers, and then head for the moon. And here we are, 1 second away from Apo, just pushing quite nicely towards an orbit. So we've got 73 by what's going to be probably around something very similar. So 40, 50, 60, 70. So 76 by 72, more than circular enough for me. Quite nice. And we're now ready pretty much to go to the moon. And I don't really have any solar panels on here. I did go and get some research points to be able to go and spend and buy the solar panels. But because we're manned, we don't need to maintain contact. And yes, last episode, if you didn't notice, I forgot to extend the aerial. Not that it would have, the antenna even, not that it would even mattered because I'd run out of power, but yeah, you get the idea. Okay, so let's get to the moon. Usual kind of process. We'll look for where it is. It's over there. And we're going to come around here, around to this point. Let's just fast forward a little bit. And that's just coming up over the horizon. So coming up, right around there. Okay, and let's just point towards prograde because that's where it's going to be. And you'll see it's just appearing right there. If you can't see it, I know it's pretty dark. It's there, promise. So we got 1377 delta V remaining. And we're going to use that to head in that direction. So let's head outwards. And we're going to stop short like last time. Someone did comment, I think. Someone did comment. I forgot the name. I need to go back and look at it. But they're saying that basically, yes, you need to go past the moon to be able to get slowed down by the moon and get a free return. I'm not too concerned about a free return. I should have enough delta V for this. I would like it, but it just helps me if I do it in patch conics. I have attempted to do this and done all kinds of mistakes if I do it any other way, so we'll wait for patch conics for the rest of that. And we're just going to bring this in around to where we did last time. We don't necessarily need science low, although it would be nice. So let's just bring ourselves to, around about there. And let's see how that actually goes. So, nothing else we can do now. We have 521 in the tank, and what we're going to be doing is getting to the moon and then getting to the longest possible orbit, the easiest orbit to actually get to fulfill the mission contract, and then we should be good. So it says basically one of the other contracts is saying we need to transmit and recover scientific data from space around Kerbin. I'm going to recover it, and we're going to do it just by going to space high. So we've already got mystery goo observation for space low, so we're going to go to space high by fast forwarding, and anywhere coming up space high, that will do. We'll take that Yep, and we'll retain it. That's 9 science. And I'm just going to get out of this mode. We don't need SAS any longer. And that's not going to light up green because we've not recovered it yet, but that's not a problem. So we're going to head out there. We've lost contact, so we're all on our own. Not that that matters. Jeb's more than good enough for this. And in comes the moon. It should be catching up to us shortly. Yep, so as we slow down relative to the moon, it should be coming along. And should snag us right there. Okay, so our Perry is 519. And at this point, all we can really do is just turn on our SAS, point retrograde, and try and brake. Okay, so we're just going to... We can do it at Perry, to be honest. That would probably make the most sense. Yeah, let's actually just do that. Most efficient is when you're actually at Perry to apply any delta V, so let's just time warp forwards. And yeah, somewhere around here. Whoops. Right now, in fact. Let's bring that in. And there's an orbit. Okay, we are technically in an orbit now. Why are you lighting up as being orbit the moon? Note, put your vessel into stable orbit. It is in a stable orbit. Okay, maybe I need to wait for a second for it to realize. 1 second. And I do wish the vanilla game would tell you the requirements more. It didn't actually apply until I brought the orbit in underneath 2 million meters, 2,000 kilometers. And at that point, it seems to be just fine. So that is orbit done. And we can also take some mystery goo from space high. Okay. And that leaves 1 capsule left because we haven't got a container. We haven't got a scientist to reset the science. So what we can do is, well, it depends how much delta V we've got. We've got 391. That's going to be a little bit tough. I was going to bring in that Perry. Let's just see just how much effort it actually takes to do that. Let's fast forward around and we should be able to do that. We ideally want to exit sort of in that direction when we come back around to leave the moon, but I don't know how much delta V is required to really deal with it. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to... No, I'm not going to chance it. I'm going to leave it as is. All right, I chanced it. So it brought us in towards the moon at 18 kilometers. And we're going to bring ourselves in and get basically the space low stuff as well. And that's going to have to come around. Whoops, need to make sure I don't fast forward past it. There we go. So space near, let's just turn SAS off for a second. So we'll get the mystery goo as well. And there we go. And now it just means a matter of leaving the moon at the appropriate point. So what I'm going to try here is to go through quite a few orbits until the angle I need to leave at, which is sort of, you know, around this point, heading that way, is the same as when Kerbin is over here. Because this side of the orbit, the apoapsis, is already fairly far out. If I were to do it on this side, I'd have to push that Perry all the way out to get to escape from the moon. So we're going to be using this side that is quite far out as hopefully a bit of a, well, not a hack, but a bit of a nice, more efficient path, given that I have actually used too much fuel. Well, not too much fuel. I've got 343 left, so that should be enough to get us back once we come around. And I think we're around about the point in this particular orbit, so it's going to be coming around here quite fast now. And once we get just beyond the Perry, sort of heading around about here, we're going to actually burn prograde, and let's see what it gets us. So let's get around. I'm going to slow down because our time warp is not going to be going too fast. Let's get SAS on. Well, in fact, we'll get SAS on in a second once we come out of time warp. There it is. SAS can come on. We're going to point prograde. We have enough electric charge for that. And yeah, around about now. Let's just see how well this goes. So let's fire up, and I'm going to just do that slowly. Okay, a bit more. And where do we go? Okay, so we are going to escape now, and let's just take a look and see how well that goes. So relative to the Earth, we're coming in. Relative to the moon, we're leaving. That's hopefully good. There we go. So we're back on a track towards the Earth. And now at this point, if we wanted to be efficient, and we probably should be, we're going to come all the way around, back around to Apo, and then we're going to bring in our Peri, and let's see how much actual delta V that cost us. So I'm going to fast forward now. Here we are at Peri, and, oh sorry, Apo, and let's bring in our periapsis. So we can look down here for an easier thing to see than that figure up there. So 1.5 megameters. So let's bring that in, shall we? Let's fire up and bring that in to... Now it's at 263 kilometers. That's much, much better. And let's bring it in back to around 28, something like that. So there's 100 and there's 50, 40, and we just have to use a tiny, tiny bit. No, 24. Let's spin around. Let's make it a little bit higher than that. We are coming in quite fast after all. And we're also coming in with a science bay. Okay. I have no RCS to fine tune this, so I just have to use Shift and X. 29, 28, 27. That will absolutely do just fine. Let's turn off everything. And now we can pretty much float in towards Kerbin. And we have 155 left. So I pretty much used 140 or so, getting us back from the very high orbit of the moon. And that excursion, brief though it was, got us up to 116 science. We got quite a bit for the various mystery goo stuff. So we're going to take all that prestige, money, and we now have 398. That's good. Means we can probably think about upgrading at least, we can get patch conics visible, and that will get us back down to 98, but now I can actually get free return trajectories by seeing them in the map. I still can't do flight planning yet, but that's going to need some other stuff. Let's have a look. What do you need? You need 150. I need to reserve some for rockets, so there's not much I can do with that just yet. We are able to get other stuff done to get some more money. Satellites for polar orbit. That's going to be quite far out, however, so that would need to be pretty good. Antenna can generate power. Reach the designated polar orbit around Kerbin with reasonable deviations. Inclination of 90 degrees. Yeah, so we just sort of have to get to that particular orbit. And then can we actually take that? We got 5 years to actually do it, so I don't see why we shouldn't take it. We'll certainly get the advance. Excuse me, need to cough. So I took that contract, and we're back here in R&D because we were able to get some more nodes. So yes, the node I actually got was electrics, which is going to help us in the contract we've just accepted. We're going to take a rechargeable battery banks and panels, and we don't necessarily need the hinges from breaking ground per se, because we don't really have large panels, but we could if we wanted to. In fact, we probably should, just as a demonstration, get some nice lights and the octo sort of probe core. But we have enough to buy another node. Now, there are nodes back here that we can still buy with flight control. It gives us MechJeb 2's case, but we have MechJeb and Engineer for all because I don't want to really attach these weird cases. They don't really go anywhere nice, and in a regular capsule, they'd be hidden inside the capsule anyway, and it just saves me having to clip them inside the capsule. Okay, so then we also have that one lander can. That's going to be useful later because we're going to go manned for landing on the moon and elsewhere. And then we have some other places. We need to get heavy rocketry at some point. I'll get us the Poodle, really handy engine, certainly for interplanetary stuff. And the Spark will be really handy as well for basically small satellites like we're about to use, along with this Oscar B fuel tank. We do, however, need these new breaking ground stuff, but we don't need them quite as much as that Spark engine, I think. I think we should definitely get that Spark engine. This is going to be my next one. It'll let us build a little rover, and we should probably use that to try and investigate the surface of Kerbin before we go anywhere with it. But to get started, let's go for propulsion systems. Let's take the Spark, and we've got 26 science left. That will do for now. Because the next place we're going to go, obviously, is going to be somewhere like Minmus, but that's going to take a little bit more assembly. Let's go and build ourselves a little bit more robust vessel than we had before. We probably want this as maybe some kind of launcher. So why don't we just save part of it as a sub-assembly, just in case we actually want it. So let's just save everything below this decoupler off as a new sub-assembly. Okay, so pull, jumper, launch. Okay, And then let's get rid of you. Get onto a new vessel. And let's assemble a better satellite than we had before. We're going to be buying the Octo, so let's just buy it anyway. It's very, very useful. Is that a new model for the Octo? Looks new. Yeah, it's nice and shiny as well. Okay. So we'll use that as the base, and then we're going to think about some fuel tanks. So if we're going to make this thing... is that the right size? Ah, it's just very far away. So there we go. So we're going to use the Oscar B fuel tanks, and let's just stack up 3 of them. We're probably going to need less than that, but we'll stack them up like that. Not going to worry about the baguette fuel tank or anything like that. And then we're going to get an engine and... whoops, not a Terrier. We want a much smaller engine. We want the Spark. Sort of useful. So let's just put that back on for a second. Whoops. Put you back on. Put this underneath. And we've got a stack there. Now, electrics, the main body of these satellites I normally make using the rechargeable battery banks anyway. So, 4 or 5, something like that. And then we'll put our engines underneath. And then we'll put some solar panels around the outside. Normally put these on the sides of the Octo to get started, but do we actually want to just put them on hinges? I can't action group them, unfortunately. But we can actually at least try the actual hinges. So, what would we actually do? We'd have... Oh, the servos are going to be quite large for this thing. And the hinges would go on the servos. Like that. Although, I guess we can just get away with 2 of them. And then we're just going to retract the hinges in. And for the solar panels to the outside. I'm going to rotate them that way. There we go. These, they seem to be not... They're sticking out too far for me. I want to have maybe... That's... Even the smallest structural segment I've got is too big, because that's the same size. I want something inset, essentially. Do we have anything that we can actually use that's inset for this? I suppose the fuel tanks are somewhat inset. Not as much as we might need. Let me have a quick look around. No, we don't really have anything yet. So, let's see just how well. This by itself has 1850 meters per second. Looks a bit long, but we'll see how well it actually goes in practice. Yeah, I almost want to have like an array on the end of a hinge, but I'm not going to worry about that just yet. We can rearrange them later, and we'll just move them to the bottom for now. That makes them slightly more compact. And can we flip them around? Yeah, so they're going to open backwards from this perspective. Yeah. Okay, and then we got 2 antennas. These don't need to be extended, thank you very much. And just in case, I'm just going to add another antenna that is a high gain antenna, just so that we can actually think about using this as long-term communications. In fact, I'll add 2. It makes it, you know, no torque on the actual thing. Everything's nice and balanced. Okay, looks quite complicated. We may have to bring it down because of the part limit. It's already 24 parts. In fact, we probably are going to have to bring it down. Unfortunately, that means we're going to have to lose the hinges. Because we can't afford the upgrade yet to the VAB. So we're going to take the high gain antennas off. We're going to have to limit this a little bit. So unfortunately, we're going to have to lose the thing that I wanted to put on this one. And we'll have to do it later. So let's put 2 solar panels. And get rid of those, unfortunately. What part are we down to now? 14. Okay, let's move that up there. 14. The whole thing's under 1 ton, just about. And let's see how that fits within the subassembly. Subassembly, pedal jumper launch. Already over our part limit by 5. So, what can we do to get rid of that? Well, first of all, I'm still going to need a payload fairing. So I'm going to have to add a part before I can remove any. So, where are we going to go with that? Where is my payloads? Yes. So I'm going to have to build this around it. and maybe there, and up to the top. Okay. Now the Octo should have some form of SAS. It doesn't have much, but it should have some. And what can we do to lose parts? We need to lose 6 parts off this thing. Well, one option is just to take off the boosters. That'll do the job. We're down at 30 parts exactly. 7,000 meters per second, so that'll take us to the moon. And we should be good to go. This will cost us 11 grand to go, but should be possible. Let's get all the staging set up. So we got that going at the same time as our main clamps. Then the second stage. We don't need that piece. Do we need that piece? Yeah, we probably want them maybe separately. So we'll use the payload fairing itself, and we'll make sure that's a clamshell deploy and the ejection force is higher than normal. And then the final stage is for positioning. So let's just call it unimaginatively Sat Launcher 1. Save it and get going. Now, because this is a polar orbit, we're going to have to wait till a certain time to actually, you know, lift off the ground, because it has a certain point in the planet's rotation we need to lift off at to actually hit this orbit. So we're approaching that point now. It seems reasonably close enough. And I did make a couple of changes to the rocket itself. I'll explain that while we're taking off, just so that we get into the right place. First of all, we are going to rotate because we're going to be heading north. That's the direction that orbit wants us to be going into. So that rotation just lets me use A and D keys to incline this thing. And we're not going to worry too much about having to go flat on this, because the orbit's so high anyway that, you know, we're going to be just using up all of this first stage regardless. We're not going to be doing too much to tip ourselves over, so it doesn't matter if we wait for a little while until we're going a few hundred meters per second. Anyway, I did shorten this thing a little bit, and I also added 2 third engines at the bottom. The thrust limited to 47.5. That gives our sea level thrust at takeoff 1.7, and that lets us get off the ground quite handily. Previously it was like 1.01, because this top satellite is actually still fairly heavy, at least for these early stages, but we have a fairly cheap rocket doing it. So we're going to bring ourselves up and over into orbit, and I'll see you up there. And here we are, we've hit orbit. Now I was slightly early, so you'll see our orbit is slightly off its rotation from our target orbit. So we're going to use this stage until it burns out, which it just has. And we'll then get rid of it. And that's not good. Why have you not separated? I forgot to put a separator on. I probably did. Well, this might be explosive. Yep, that's heating up. And well, that's one way to separate. Do remember to put a separator on, and let's get this out to roughly around the right kind of area. Stop. Okay, that's reasonable, and everything else should be fine. We are going to be off. We're going to have to rotate this around, but I'll make that correction. We've used about a third of our fuel doing that, and pretty much everything here is not something I can influence now, other than just maybe rotating this towards the sun a little bit. There we go. And once we've stabilized, turning off our SAS and getting out to the Apo. And given we're out here, we're just going to get to the the Apo, and going to get to prograde is what I was trying to say. And we'll burn that to bring out the other side of the orbit, hopefully close-ish to our target. So out you go, and hopefully that's not going to be too terrible as far as our remaining fuel situation is going to be. And there it goes. And let's bring this around. Well, I need to press X to press Z. So our orbit is a little bit off. We can actually just adjust that as we actually go around. And let's see, how far off are we? We're a fair bit off. So we're going to need to maybe burn, I want to say, not one of the purple ones. It's going to be one of the blue ones. Yeah. And let's just guess, because I never remember which one of these is the right one. Can we actually rotate this? Wrong way. So spin around to the other one, and we should be able to correct that. So let's just use that there, and we can rotate this around. It's a little bit inefficient to do it this way, maybe. but that should be fine. And then we can bring ourselves back to retrograde and bring in our orbit. And it will be broadly similar to the original. There we are, it's getting quite close. And we've achieved the mission. There we go. Maintain stability for 10 seconds. So even though we were slightly out, we were slightly early on launching, it's more than lenient enough to let you do that. So there we go. That's our mission done. And we've got some money. And we've got, of course, we've got a satellite in orbit. And it's sustainably in orbit. It has plenty of fuel left to do new maneuvers. There's not really any science on board. I was sort of short of parts, but later satellites will have science, just in case we need to get any missions like transmit science from space around Kerbin, which is easy to do when you have a vessel already up there. So that's a satellite contract done, and back to the Space Center. And here we are back at the contracts, and we do have a couple more options. Now, I'm not going to do these on camera, but you get the idea. We're going to be able to do them with another position in polar orbit, and that is, again, it's actually a lower orbit this time, so we're more than capable of doing that one and getting an extra 50 grand. So that's that one. We'll get some advance. And then there's also another one, position satellite in a specific orbit of Kerbin. No, we want the actual one, position satellite in an equatorial orbit of the moon. So Apo and Perry, and we can now see patch conics, so we should be able to do that without much of a problem. We do need to put a mystery goo unit on the top of the satellite, but again, that shouldn't be an issue. And we should be able to get some money with that. And that takes us up to 188. Simultaneously, that means I can now spend on this upgrade and get flight planning, which brings us back down to 38, but we should now have more than enough to be able to do those missions. Because how much do they make? The rockets cost 12 grand, and we've got enough for 3 tries without any problem. And of course, we'll get the completion rewards for those. So if we actually do that, then all we need to add to this is a mystery goo container, just the one on top. Okay. And that takes the part count up. So easiest way to get rid of the part count is just to lose one of the batteries. So I want to retain that, and that will give us a bit more delta V. 6,493, far more than we had when we were doing manned. Of course, you've got to make sure you don't lose contact with Kerbin, at least not during one of the maneuvers. Otherwise, we should be pretty good. So stage 4 is 1.69 delta V at sea level, and then 0.4, but we'll get quite far up before we actually need that. Set the sea level thrust, of course, is stage 3, which is this upper stage. No problem there, and I will show you the results of those next episode. But that doesn't mean in fact, let me just cut forwards to doing this one, the one we need to go on around the moon, because we need to do patch conics for it. May as well show you that, because we now got full flight planning. Okay, and we can set the moon as target, which is good, which I just did. And of course now we can sort of plan for that kind of thing. So let's just plan our maneuver sort of where we would previously. And we can use the old way of doing it, which is to drag this out as you normally would. But down here you can see there is also a similar sort of setup. There's 2 text maneuver editor and a graphical one. So if you want to enter a specific amount of delta V, you can here, let's say 900. And let's put it there, and that's it. Well, that's going to get an encounter, but then it's going to fly off into nowhere. So there is also still the maneuver editor, and you can grab that in here and click on it to bring things in, or click and drag if you want to move things quite a lot. In our case, well, that's, it's pretty good, but we can get a lot closer because our orbit's going to need to get to close on that orbit that we have in there. So let's just focus the view over there, and there's the orbit it wants us to get to. Thankfully, it's going anti-clockwise as we look at it from the top, which means we should just be able to bring in our maneuver node editor, hopefully. That's annoying. I need to be able to edit it from here. Can I just select it for using this? I can. Good, that's nice. So now we can bring it in from all the way out here. So let's just bring this. We'll have to bring this scale down now, so make smaller and smaller adjustments. And we're going to go prograde. So let's bring the scale up a little bit. It's still visual, but it's a lot more precise, I would say. Not to kind of put on the precise node editor mod, but it's more precise than we did have. So let's bring that all the way in. We can use the mouse scroll wheel as well, and that's going to need other adjustments because it's not liking it quite there. Let me see if I can get that a little bit closer. Probably a time adjustment more than anything else. And yep, if you click these center markers, you can adjust the time in the orbit itself that you actually go. And in our case, you can see we've got a burn time of 29 seconds. And we have 23 minutes, and we have 27 seconds of fuel remaining. And I still didn't put a separator underneath that spark stage. So you'll see also under here we have start burn in. Now that's new, it didn't exist before, and you now have a little calculator that says exactly when do you want me to start the burn. It'll calculate for you when you need to actually push the start button, or the Z key in our case, start button, space bar. Anyway, you can adjust that a little bit if you want to, because we're going to run out of fuel a little early. So we should perhaps, the spark's nowhere near as good, so we should probably start at maybe, well, we'll just start at 50%. It's still only 2 seconds of fuel, so hopefully that'll be okay. I'll make the maneuver easy enough to do, and we just need to have signal. We don't right now, and ready to go. So let's get back to our satellite. And here we are, so we're just going to do the final adjustments. Start burning 9 seconds, 8 seconds, etc. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and burn. So off we're going to go. And we're going to burn this entire stage out, so we don't even need to worry about this from this point onwards. We will, however, need to use a little bit more of our next stage in, which is, we can't see this at the moment, I need to put some lights on the subject. Yeah, the next stage in, which will get us there, but, you know, that should be straightforward. Let's just get to getting through this stage, so 6 seconds remaining, and we'll just chase that maneuver a little bit. Okay, apparently we've achieved it with 1.2 seconds remaining. Well, we'll see how close we are to our target orbit. Let's just go back to the moon, focus view. There we go. So it is pretty close, and yeah, what we can probably do now is we're down with low fuel, so let's get rid of this stage entirely. Let's trigger both of these stages. Okay, that is the previous stage. It should have gone. Let's go back to the map and let's see if we can adjust this a little bit. How are we for prograde? If I go prograde, is it going to move in or out? In. So we need to go retrograde and get that a little bit closer to the target orbit. There we go, that's nice. And then we'll just add another maneuver node around here, and we'll add a maneuver, and we'll just do the usual sort of circularization thing. In this case, it's quite easy to actually drag the retrograde markers around and to get that to where we want it. So, in fact, no, that's nowhere near enough. I need to bring that in. That's another orbit that we're actually going to go through. We're not going to go touch that. We're going to bring our orbit all the way in. There we go. And that should be more than close enough for the detection. We can shift it around if we actually need to, you know, can play around with this as well. But that's pretty good. And 289 meters per second. We've got 1800, so our satellite's pretty good. And I'll leave it there because obviously that's going to be something that is not terribly hard to actually do. We can actually warp to any point along this orbit, warp here, and we'll get just there and be able to finish it off. So that's pretty good. In comes on our satellite, while I say the usual stuff, which is subscribe and share if you've liked the episode. Click a thumbs up, click on the bell if you want notifications for further episodes, and of course we'll see you next time with some more breaking ground. And as always, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and in comes my maneuver. So maybe we should just finish up this node and get our contract complete. So we just point ourselves towards the maneuver node, and we can burn it pretty much any time once we get to here. So let's just warp all the way in, and we should be able to see the moon in front of us. Yep, there it is. I am going to put some lights on these satellites. I want that to be nice and bold in the middle of the screen. There we go. Planet Shine does help if you want to install the Planet Shine mod, but we don't actually need it. And at this point, we should be enough for us to just use all this fuel. Why have I stopped? Oh, we still haven't triggered the previous stage. It still came along with us. Yeah, we're going to get rid of you. Goodbye. Okay, now we're going to use the actual stage, and that's going to explode again in a second. Go away. Yes, we're using fuel to actually explode the previous stage. We don't get any thrust, and that's quite nice. We don't get any thrust until that actually finishes. But is that enough? It's close. We may need a slight adjustment, maybe to one of the other areas. Probably, let's go one of these. Let's try you. Yeah, that's getting us close enough. And there it is. Done. All right. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you next time.